So I think there's one interesting phenomena with the black community, and I want to talk about, well, this one, the first one's a little bit more general. Well, I might just talk about one, but it is basically you've got knowledge outside of the community, right? And that knowledge is critical to how the world works. And the thing is, yeah, how the world works, science, technology, all that sort of thing, right? There's not going to be black leaders that own that knowledge, off the bat, from the start. Um, and I'm talking like, let's just say when slavery ended. Let's just talk about, at the start, right? Um, so like the whole dynamic is you have to really immerse yourself, right, in order to have an enjoyable educational experience. I think immersion, is really important to the education process. Um, really enjoying school, enjoying the learning process, and not. I think there's so much of a negative stigma or like a negative prejudgment associated with what it takes to learn. Um, and it doesn't need to be there because there we do have better conditions today, to sit back and learn and so forth. But there's also, there's a lot of things that come into the psychology of learning that inhibit the whole experience. Um, but yeah, with that though, when it comes to getting the best of that, it seems like it seems like in general, roughly, there is this kind of required immersion. Um, what did I? There's just this inevitable immersion with, I guess, a white culture or like a white majority. I mean, you could say that, but it's just Asians, Indians as well too, right? Um, White preference. So I think that the rest of the world is actually white. I mean, because look at Indians, look at Asians. You got your one side of the spectrum, and you got your other side of the spectrum. And as far as the order of their society goes, as far as who's on top and who are the icons, the archetypes, right? They're pretty much all white. So I'm thinking, light skin in general. So it's like when you're black, the archetypes of black people, um, those who stand out the most, are black, right? And there's all that all that color psychology between the people, blah blah blah, right? Um, but it's just like black is being black. Everybody else is white. And then I see that. I'm thinking about the future primarily. So yeah, with that, it's interesting because you kind of fall into a situation where you are by default not connected, and it's like, yeah, you can be connected, you can be friends, da da da, but it's like it's different. Because really, like our social connections boil down to sex. I mean, a lot. And I can't say it boiled down to sex, but I think sex lives at the bedrock of our social connections. And I think there is a gap. There's a gap between how those different communities connect between each other in that area. Um, because that is pretty much the most, what do you call it, discriminatory practice that we do. But the thing is, so that's at the crux of it, right? That's at the crux of it. Who we fall in love with, whatever. That's all at the crux of it. But that echoes down to who your community will be. I've heard plenty of times that like I'm not gonna. I've heard plenty of times that fuck man. I've heard some shit though. but it's about basically black guys running through white girls and how nobody wants to deal with that. So that's like one extension. That's one element that plays into the whole gravity of these preferences, because it's like, okay, now she's excommunicated from the higher elite of the, community, sororities and et cetera, whatever. Now, there's, of course, you'll say there's a lot of chaos around that shit today, right? Anyway, it trickles around different ways. And it's kind of like, it's overall, I mean, just, the way the real world works, everything is foggy and noisy, but there's like kind of these gravities or these tendencies in which things lean or gravitate to. So, you have these things at the core, and they stem from that. So yeah, with that, you're immersed in a situation where you have a disconnect at so many levels. And like the only type of connection is utility. It's like, okay. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much, I mean, things have changed though, but that's like the interesting dynamic, because you can, you're emerging, you're immersed in that, and then you come out, right? And now you're trying to build something in your image, so to speak. And then there's the whole connection process, trying to bring that back. The thing is, there's so much, right? There's so much information, and it's like it requires so much dedication. And, you're already in a scattered position as a community, or as a, I guess, demographic, already scattered. And like the whole risk reward thing, it's like everyone's taking high risk. Everyone's taking high risk. It's all desperate. It's all pretty much coming down. It's like, it's all the final countdown. So, you go all in, so to speak, when it comes to building something up intellectually. And then, there's a risk as far as bridging all that information back. And, dealing with the power dynamics, because that's the other thing about this whole, that's the other thing about the whole thing. It's like the whole connectivity thing, you're going to be playing a certain part within the whole power dynamics, right? You're playing a certain part, and you only have a certain range as far as how far you can get with that, based on what I've been talking about before. Because, and that plays a huge part in politics, as far as like the subtleties of all that sort of thing. So you only have certain amount of range as far as learning that game. And when it comes to taking back your precious gems of information, you still got to hold those yourself so that you can grow and allocate whatever the fuck you're trying to build. But you still got to play the power game. You still got to play the politics. So that's the situation.